So one of the most important guidelines in Dance Awake is the guideline of being mindful and respectful of others, particularly when we're dancing in a group or with other people. Um, Everyone is really open and vulnerable and going deep into their own processes and into their own creativity and exploring aspects of themselves that the whole reason for the space is there so that we can actually touch these spaces, that we allow ourselves a break from our normal habits and patterns of our day-to-day lives, and we open up into a space where we start to look at more of the potential that is within us, the human potential, and we begin to tap into that. And for that to happen, we have to feel safe, and we have to allow ourselves to become a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more open, a little bit more courageous in exploring the parts of our being that perhaps are either things that we normally push down, push away, or are not particularly comfortable with necessarily looking at all the time. So we take it on in the dance, we take it on in the spaces. We want to get to know ourselves better. We don't want to be hiding aspects of ourselves from the rest of us, suppressing feelings and emotions that are disturbing our being. In conscious dance, we choose to look at everything. We choose to dance with everything and move with the understanding that by dancing with these things or moving with these things, we get a deeper understanding of why they're there, and we also start to enter into a process where we can finally perhaps let certain things go and free up the energy, the enormous energy that's required to often push these things or keep them aside or get them out of the way because they're inconvenient to our normal day-to-day life. Of course, we cut off huge pieces of ourselves by doing that, and part of the whole process of Dance Awake is to really integrate and embody all of our human potential and to not deny pieces of our being part of where they fit within us. However, to do this often requires a profound level of safety, or a feeling of safety, a feeling of I'm in a space where I can unpack myself, where I can touch on spaces that are a little bit more unknown, and therefore there's an element that one needs to approach them with the feeling that I can safely do this, that I can allow myself to express parts of my being that I'm not particularly necessarily comfortable with or familiar with, and as a result one needs to feel really, really safe to do that. So this is the huge gift that we're able to give each other when we dance together in a space, this guideline respecting others, to allow people to be puddles of tears on the floor, or in a corner somewhere holding themselves in a tender way without needing to rescue them or go and touch them and particularly intervene in some way to their process, but to actually give people the space to have their process is a great gift that we can give each other. And of course this requires us to develop a sensitivity to the others and to our movements in a space. And this is how this guideline begins to play out, in that we are not only aware or present, which is the first guideline, to stay present. We're not only present to what's moving on inside our own being, but we're also present to the space, and sensitive, listening, and then moving in response to what we can see and feel and touch within the space. So being mindful of others really is allowing them a possibility of a deeper process, because they're not having to have one eye open to where's that that person that's either staring at them or making them feel uncomfortable because they're being inappropriate or crossing boundaries. If everyone's deeply listening, then there's none of that really going on, and everyone is able to and free to go into their own process. The trouble often that comes into a conscious dance space is when people come with a certain agenda. They're not there to follow the sort of guidelines and the aspiration of Dance Awake, the aspiration being to cultivate a deeper understanding and awareness of one's own self and one's own being through this practice of movement. And suddenly the agenda becomes, I'm here to connect with others and to dance with others, or I want to getting up into other people's spaces, and I want to meet people, and we come filled with these agendas, often because the space looks so similar to what we're familiar with, which is being at a party, being at a rave, being at a nightclub. We come and suddenly it's the same game on, and frankly, it's incredibly boring. It's really not what the space is intended for. It's not a party. It's not a place to come and meet and pick up people, and of course there's a social element, and after the class one can chat and connect with other people, and it's often a community of like-minded people, so it's wonderful, to meet them. But on the dance and through the dance, it's really not about that at all. Partnering in the dance, connecting with others in the dance happens out of a very, very deep listening and feeling into the energetic, so that certain times spontaneously there's something arises and you can feel, yes, there's a dance here between you and me. And if that's the case, and it's really, really true, we listen to it, we allow ourselves to follow that dance, and often those are incredibly profound and beautiful dances that have their moment on the floor and then they end and one dances away from the other. We don't cling, we don't want to continue the dance, we don't want to take the person home afterwards. It's really just that moment of meeting and connection that allows a very, very beautiful dance to unfold sometimes. But we certainly don't come with the agenda that needs to happen every class, and that's going to be the case every class. No, it's really a spontaneous arising, and when it's genuine like that, it's often then accepted by both parties. Both people can feel it, they connected, they're feeling into their bodies, and they allow it. Of course, everyone is free to leave a dance like that at any time. If you ever feel uncomfortable when you're in movement with another person, it's okay to just go and to dance away from that other person, and that guideline, respecting others, means that the other person will respect that boundary and let you go off into your dance and continue with theirs. So it's an opportunity in two ways, because within a conscious dance space, particularly when there's a lot of people, it's very difficult for the facilitator to clock everything going on in the space. And there are people that still come with agenda, that don't listen to the guidelines, that develop a certain behavior that may be a bit predatory and a bit, really just wanting that agenda or pushing an agenda to connect with others and really keep, and I call them the petty tyrants in the space. They are opportunities to really allow us to discover and put our boundaries up, to be able to, in our language of this body, firmly stay to no, or leave me alone, or if it gets to the extreme, fuck off, literally. And this is the one opportunity or time in a conscious dance space where it's a non-verbal space. We trying to speak and communicate with others through body language and through movement, but this is the one time where if you have a real pestering person, you can also just go, please leave me alone, or don't dance with me, or just move away, or say no. If they're not getting the message, with your sort of turning your back to them and dancing away from them, if they're not getting the message. And of course, personally, I really don't like people in the space that are predatory, that have come with that agenda. I prefer them not to be in the space, and as much as possible, when I see it going on, I would stop it as well. I would have a chat to that person and go, look, that's not the space for that. This isn't a party. This isn't a nightclub. We're not here to prey on other people, to meet people, to make people feel uncomfortable. So this respecting others guideline requires a deep listening to what's appropriate in the space and to be responsible in the space, because it's not about only the people who are having to deal with these people coming onto them, putting up boundaries and learning how to dance and know. That's one aspect of it, and it's useful, and obviously we do that to a certain extent. But how wonderful if they didn't even need to put boundaries up, that they didn't have these constant implications or insinuations into their space, that they could be left alone to dance, that when someone's moving with their eyes closed, they know they're not going to be touched by someone else. They're not going to be, people aren't going to move in their space. If someone's quietly lying on the floor at the end of the dance, no one's going to come up to them and interfere with their space, that they are going to be left to their own movements. So as I say, this respect of others is a real gift that we give each other in this space. In terms of moving the space, it's also paying attention. Like, we all have our own dance, and sometimes the energy in us is very or like needs a big expression or radical expression, and it's like very like movie around the space, and one needs to run around and create that, and often that's fine if it's naturally what's occurring inside your body, if it's naturally the energy moving in your body. Often even then that movement is then not disturbing in the space because it's a natural flow of the energy in your being. But when we're running around and playing the fool and just wanting to jump up and down and exhibit ourselves, that is incredibly disturbing in a space because it's not coming from an authentic expression, and as a result of it, it's a rub. It's a rub against the container and the space. So it requires a listening to the space. When the music is quiet at the end of a dance, when everyone is settling into a place of stillness and there's a subtle tuning into the more subtle experience, stamping on the floor is disturbing. So when you feel the need to do that at that particular time of a class, check in. Do I really need to do this now? Can I do it at like a fraction of the volume and still get that expression out? I really need to do it now. It's deep inside me, but I know it's going to disturb the space because it's not the right time. Can I just check myself there? And this is really an important aspect of a very, very important aspect of the conscious dance container. This respecting others is the one that creates safety in the space. It's the one that allows people catharsis. It's the one that allows people to touch places so deep inside themselves that they can express a cry or a scream or a move with incredible grief and have profound moments of joy and ecstasy, where they can be fully expressive of their body and move in an almost sensual way without that being an invitation for someone else to come into their space and interfere with that. So this guideline is paramount. It's really, especially when dancing in a group, one of the most, or singly the most important guideline that we have in a conscious dance space. It's what's lacking from a nightclub where you're always having to put up boundaries and keep people out of your space. Very hard to drop into your own space then when you're constantly being preyed on by others. You're worried about what someone slipped into your drink, all of that kind of stuff. If that is interesting to you, go to a nightclub, go to the parties. But if you come to a dance away class, let go of agendas, let go of what it is that you're doing there, and open up to the possibility that what you could discover in a conscious dance away class is infinitely better than you could imagine, and to use the space in that spirit, in the spirit of self-exploration and self-discovery, a place to come and move in process of everything going on in your life, and a place to come and become very creative within everything that's moving in your life. So that is a little bit about respecting others, and that is how I like to hold the spaces that I teach and the Dance Awake facilitators. This is a very, very important aspect of our particular style of conscious dance. So if you are coming to a Dance Awake class and what I've spoken about rings true, then you're welcome. If it's like, nah, I want to go, then don't come. It's that simple. The choice is always ours, but the Dance Awake facilitators will not tolerate predatory behavior in a space, will not tolerate people who are coming in and disturbing the space because they are simply not choosing to follow the guidelines, which would develop the sensitivity in them to being able to listen to what's appropriate in a space. Yeah.